Hi guys, so we are back, and in this video we're gonna talk about functions. Functions is probably my most favorite concept in Python because I create functions all the time. So without any further ado, let me just create a file. Let me call it func python.py. All right. And now the way we create functions is by we say that we want to define a function. So we say def, and then let me just create a function. Let me say I am a function, and we do this makes sure that, like, if you want to pass in a parameter, we do it within the two brackets, right? And then what we can do is, like, similar to classes, it's just gonna indent to show that now whatever we do within this indent level, it's gonna be within the scope of this function, right? So if I say print I am within a function, so now what's basically what I'm doing is I have created a function. Functions are basically a list of instructions, right? So this, as for an instruction, I'm just basically printing this string value, right? So if I want to access this thing, if I want this function to run, what I'm gonna do is I can just say that I am a func, I just want you to run this. Okay, now before I run this program, why don't I have to additionally say print this thing, right? We don't have to do it because the moment this program runs, it's basically gonna go inside the function, and within the scope it's gonna look for the list of instructions that it's supposed to execute, right? And the first instruction for this function is to print this string value, right? So I don't have to additionally do anything, right? So now if I just go to the terminal, let me see what files are there. Okay, so if I want to run func, oops. Okay, so now it can print the string value that is within the scope, right? So now we can do a lot of interesting things with function, right? Because now we can pass in certain parameters as well. So let me just show you what I mean by that. So now if I say I'm a func called, and then if I just say I want to initialize another name, right? And now what I can do is I can say I can pass in whatever function name that I want this function to have, right? And what I can do is I can use the parameter to pass in, say, name. So now if I say I want this function to be called Bartola, right? If I want the function to be called Bartola, what's gonna happen is it's gonna pass this value into as a parameter to this part, and then the instruction is basically gonna print this string, and it's gonna look for the variable called name, which is basically passed on as a parameter, right? So now if I run this program, I should expect to see I am within a function called Bartola, right? Although that doesn't make sense, but whatever, you get the idea, right? I'm within a function called Bartola, right? Okay, now at the similar way I can also create, say, I'm a function called what was that place with the green roof? I don't remember actually, but let me just say library. Okay, so now what I've done is now it basically is calling a function. One time as a parameter it's passing Bartola, and the other time it's passing a parameter called library, right? So every time I try to, if I run this program, I'm gonna see two string inputs, right? I'm within a function called Bartola, I'm within a function called library. Okay, awesome. Now what we can do is we can also use the function to return certain values, right? So if I say let me just create a value, let me say let me call every time I try to create a variable, all the only name that pops into my head is burgers for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, anyways, let me just create a value called burgers, and let me just comment this out, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna return burgers, right? So now what is gonna happen? So now what I can do to capture this value, I can just say I can just create a value. Let me say I am a capturing device. All right, and now if I call I am a func, what's gonna happen? Let me just run you through what's happening, right? So now I have created a value called I am a capturing device. I can call it whatever I want, and it's basically just calling this function. Very simple, right? And when our program runs this code, it's gonna go to that particular function, and it's gonna see what commands are within the scope of that function, and it's gonna see that I have created a value called created a variable called burgers with a value of 10, and then I'm just returning the burgers, right? So basically the function returns the value. So now what I have here instead is, although you can see that I have written I'm a function, but when I run this, the value is gonna be returned to this part, right? So now I'm a capturing device is basically the value 10, right? Because I'm just returning the burgers variable, right? So now if I say print I am a capturing device, although it shouldn't be a variable name, it's not good practice. You should have like short names and in a very ordered way, but whatever, you get the idea. So now if I print this, what is gonna happen? It's gonna print 10. And do we really understand why it's printing 10? Because I'm a capturing device is calling this function. The function has this variable called burgers with a value 10, and then it's returning the burgers to whoever called this function. So it's gonna go back to here, and then I'm a capturing device has now the value 10, and then I'm just printing it out. So if I run this command, it's gonna say I'm a function missing one required position argument name, right? So I had initialized a parameter called name, which I didn't pass, right? So if I just remove this part and then run the code, it should work just fine. Because when you have parameters initialized, you have to pass in parameters, right? Otherwise, why would you have a function with a parameter, right? You can create a function without a parameter. So earlier in that scenario, I had this parameter, right? So now what else can we do? We can do something else, right? We can do this thing. We can say burgers is equal to name, and now we can pass in a parameter in the IAM function, and then the burgers is basically going to have that value that we pass as the new value, right? So now what we can do is we can say the name of the burger is actually hot spicy chilox hot spicy burger, and this is the name of the burger. And now if I print I am a capturing device with this string burger name is, all right, I just did a little formatting. So now what's happening is, so okay, let me just tell you what is happening. So when I run this program, I created this function, but I didn't call this function, so nothing happens, right? And then I created a variable. The program can see that I have created a variable, and I'm calling in the function which is in this particular file, right? And then I'm passing in a certain parameter, a string value, right? And the string value goes to this part, and then this function recognizes the name variable because I'm passing it as a parameter, and then it's going to put it into this variable called the burgers, and then I'm just basically returning the burgers. I'm not printing it out. I could have printed it out, but I'm not printing it out. I'm just pushing back, throwing out the burgers right at you, right? Wherever you called me, wherever you call the function, right? So it's basically throwing the burgers part out into the I'm a capturing device, and now I'm a capturing device has the value burgers, right? Which is basically Chilox hot spicy burger, right? So now if I print this, what's gonna happen is it's gonna say burger name and then the value that is within, that is the I'm capturing device, which is basically Chilox hot spicy burger, if that makes sense. And it does. And if I run the program, It says burger name Chillax hot spicy burger, and this is how you create functions in Python, and this is how you pass in parameters, and this is how you create variables within. I have showed you in my earlier video how to create a string variable, and this is how you create variables within this. And within the scope of the function, you can also create for loops and stuff. But this is all I wanted to show in this video, and see you next time, guys.